What's up, guys? Welcome to the second episode of our OnlyFriends podcast, where our Silicon Valley chat group comes to life. I'm joined today by my favorite guests. No, that's so unfair to Emmett. Emmett's not here today. We got Jaime Quintero, Jamie Quint, our own version of the alt-right David Sachs. We've got T-Con Bernstam, the FPS Russia of startups, and we've got Y Combinator CEO, the very own Michael Seibel, the Rick Ross of tech, and of course I'm Justin Kahn, your favorite founder's favorite founder. I guess if you're the Rick Ross, I'm like the Jackie Chan of tech. So today we got a lot of great things to talk about. We've been I think this is going to be a fun one. But first I want to check in with all of you guys. How's everyone feeling?
Doing good.
Yeah,
I didn't know I was alt-right, but I guess I am now.
That's the identity you have to assume here.
it's
I like
too late
that
to
everyone
cancel yourself, Jamie.
Yes. I was saying before we started that my goal is to walk everyone right up to the line of cancellation, but not over it. Definitely not over it. Just right up.
I'm not walking at all, so good luck.
Michael was in the right before this. Michael's like furiously crossing off things off the like talking points list. Nope, not going to talk about that. Not going to talk about that. Not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about that.
I didn't realize it's like the Colbert Report and I have to play a character.
No, Jamie, just be yourself.
I didn't prepare ahead of time.
Jamie's just mad because he's like, you're the classic libertarian rebranded as alt-right by the internet and super pissed about it.
I love that. I'm not sure if that's better. I think that's better.
It's definitely better.
That's better. Libertarians didn't storm the Capitol, so that's better.
I'll let Saxon
If they did, they have better reasons.
predecessors in that.
It's already gotten off to a great start here. This really reminds me of Justin TV. I hope someone else finds this funny.
I'll have you know, like, people loved the first one. They loved it. People wanted. I put out some stuff like, what do people want to see? They just want shooting the shit. People telling stories about, Silicon Valley stories. They want to hear the inside, insider's account on all this stuff. So that's why I want to start with YC and with Demo Day, because Seibel, you've been hard at work for months preparing all these companies, and I feel like it's like you have every 6 months, it's like you're carrying the world on your shoulders. You're meeting with these founders 24/7, and then the day after Demo Day, I swear to God, you just drop that shit and you're like, I'm donezo. Goodbye. Good luck.
Not exactly, but no, it was definitely a big batch. We had about 350 companies in this batch, and it was great. I mean, half the batch was international. First time we've ever done that. We wrote a whole bunch of software, so our lives were a lot easier than in person. It's interesting. There's so much efficiency doing online. I'm almost shocked when I think about what it used to be like. I mean, I used to have founders like drive an hour and take 30 minutes to park in San Francisco to meet me for 20 minutes. Like, that doesn't seem like a good product.
It's efficient for you.
I mean, it worked for me. Did not work for them. So this has been great. It's been great to do it online.
So a couple questions there. Do you think that, like, every year when YC would become more and more international, I feel like people in Silicon Valley who are very like, America-centric would be like, oh, this is like the end of it's like the decline of Y Combinator. Do you feel like we've reached a tipping point with this like 50% number, or is it just the continuation of the fact that like more and more wealth is being created outside of, SF Bay Area?
Well, first, I feel like the decline of Y Combinator was predicted from the first batch through, I think we're at 30-something now. So
it was the batch when they let T-Con in.
The second batch.
I apologize.
Like the third one.
That was the beginning. That was the beginning of the decline. And it's just been a very slow decline. No, I've actually been really surprised at how many smart investors are like very comfortable investing internationally. And I think everyone is seeing the exact, Justin, you included. I think everyone is seeing the startup community going global. And I think a lot of investors passed on China in the, 10 to 15 years ago and realized that was really dumb. And so they don't want to make that mistake twice. In terms of where the numbers will go, yeah, I think the United States will be in the minority in terms of companies we fund at some point in the next couple of years. America's 300 and something people. The rest of the world is 7 billion. I think we should.
It makes
at least
sense
fund...
that more of the founders should come from outside of America.
It does.
It does. I mean,
mathematically,
you don't have to be a professor of mathematics to get that.
Well, and also a lot of international companies are selling in the U.S. So it's not just international companies building for international markets. It's international founders building for the U.S. market. A lot are actually.
That was interesting, actually. So, before Demo Day started, we were on our group chat, and I'm like making fun of you that it's like all Indian companies doing like X for India. Right? After Demo Day, 3 days later, I'm like, I have made it rain on Indian companies. Like, I think we invested we've invested literally millions of dollars in Indian companies in YC because, actually I'm super bullish on India's market. But then there's also this other angle that's very interesting to me, which is companies that are building in India and selling into the US market, which is actually because of the high OpEx cost in Silicon Valley of running a team. We already started to see that before coronavirus, right? But there were these teams that were like, it would cost you literally $100 a square foot for office in San Francisco, and you paid engineers starting salary 200 something thousand, and like executives 400,000. So like you could like feed a whole village of programmers in India or Ukraine or anywhere else, and it was becoming a competitive advantage to have your development team anywhere but the SF Bay Area.
Especially because of how hard it is to hire here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and also the average tenure of an engineer in San Francisco is dramatically lower than in other offices. I talked to a large YC company, to the CEO, and he was saying that the average tenure in San Francisco is something like a third of like the office they have in a different region that I won't name.
I mean, it kind of begs the question of why does anyone hire in San Francisco?
Nice. I think that we're confusing the problems with later stage companies with the problems with early stage companies. So I don't think that I think all the later stage companies have a hard time hiring. I think the early stage companies, I don't hear the complaints nearly as much. What I do think, though, is that if you're an international company wanting to sell in the U.S., two things are very helpful. One is everyone going to remote. You don't have to do in-person meetings. It's a huge advantage if you're international. And then the second is YC has a ton of alumni to sell to. Some of these international startups are getting smart and realizing, oh crap, like YC is my entry to the US market. And to your point, I have lower fixed costs. It seems smart.
So do you think YC itself ever goes back from remote? We talked about this a little bit. Do you think it's remote forever because it is so efficient and becoming so international? Or is it going to go back post-coronavirus to kind of what was happening before, which for people who don't know is basically like you'd come to Silicon Valley for 10 weeks and meet in person. We'd do a dinner every week. I shouldn't say we. YC would have a dinner every week. Someone reputable like a TCon would come and talk, and then that's the program, and then you'd have group office hours in person and office hours in person with your YC partners, and then it would culminate in this big event, Demo Day, the Super Bowl of Silicon Valley, where you'd go in front of 1,000 investors and try not to shit yourself on stage, while you present your like 3-minute pitch. Like,
I think no one's done that
ever
yet.
come back?
Yes, for the record, no one has shat themselves on stage. But
There's no shame in it. There's no shame.
It was only a matter of time if we didn't move remote.
Also, you can say we're all YC alum on this. So,
That's true.
Short answer is I don't know. What we are exploring is we think there needs to be something in person, but we're not sure that people actually have to be here for 10 weeks in a row. So we're thinking about what could be a great experience maybe at the beginning of the batch and maybe at the end of the batch to build in-person relationships, but let people be home during the middle of the batch. That's what we're exploring. We'll see. I mean, we're planning the next batch, and that's going to be remote, right? So summer 21. So that's where most of our focus is. But for winter 22, We'll see. It'll be interesting, but it won't go back to the old way. I mean, the batch is so big, we don't even fit in the building in Mountain View, so we
The
can't
building that
physically.
costs like millions and millions of dollars to renovate. that one.
Technically,
It's okay,
that wasn't
Airbnb will pay for
YC's
that
money.
one.
Yeah, that was PG's money, so I just drop in the hat.
Well, Jamie, Tikon, you guys think it's? I mean, what do the rest of you guys think? Like about does remote the same? Would remote be the same experience? People seem to have a really powerful experience when I talk to them.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because like I actually met all of you guys because of YC, and I wonder if it would have worked as well if we were all in different cities, like kind of like zooming that in. That'd be like my one concern. But I think it's really admirable how good the demo day was this batch. Like I was actually really pleasantly surprised just by the sheer quality of it, and everyone I talked to was raving about the experience.
The experience
Yeah.
is really good. Sorry, go, Jamie.
I think it's changed a little bit. So like I guess I did YC twice. The first time was in 2008. There were like 19 companies, and the second time was 2016. I think there was like 120 companies, and even once there's 120 companies, you don't know anybody. Like you kind of meet a few people, but you might meet different people like every week, and then maybe you get to know like 10 companies or like 20 other people or something like that. And by the time there's like 300 companies, even if it was in the same physical location, you're not meeting any more people. So I feel like, and then like the first YC, we knew everybody, and then we knew everybody from the previous like versions of YC because like that wasn't even that many people, and I feel like that was just a super unique experience. And like I think YC is better now for a lot of reasons, for raising money, for like just driving fundraising hype cycle and all of that stuff. Like I remember our first YC, it was like we were presenting to a room of maybe 40 investors or something like that, 30 investors,
like 35 people that Paul got on a field trip.
Yeah, I think we had like
peer pressure.
I think we had 20
up.
minutes to present. So
I hope you use those 20 minutes wisely.
we did a
Lots of
demo.
opportunity.
We did a demo, a full demo. Like it was nothing like it is now.
My first demo day in 2006, a investor grilled me so deeply on technical issues. I was like, how do you know all this? He's like, oh, I'm not actually an investor. I'm a Google engineer who Paul asked to come to demo day to like fill seats.
Did he end up investing?
No, he didn't invest in anyone.
He just
Google
took
salaries
your
weren't high
time
enough
away.
back then.
That's great. He just took your time away from talking to investors. That's a value add.
Yeah, that's amazing.
No,
Okay,
but
so
Jamie, I think you're right. I think you're exactly right. I think I think that in a batch you can really only meet about 20 companies and form a close relationship with them, regardless of the batch size. And so we actually have to spend a lot more time subdividing the batch and actually building what we call sections, which is the smallest group of about 8 companies, about 20, 25 people. And that's become almost like the first batch of YC, first couple batches of YC. So if we design a section really well, people get that really intimate experience. And like now that's our challenge. It's like, how do we make your small peer group, and you meet them every week now in group office hours, how do we make that group really tight? And that's hard. We're just starting to get good at that. But I think that's how we're going to recreate that really early experience. Doing it, when we had batches, like you said, of 100 plus, putting 250 people in a Mountain View office, it's like going to a college lecture. Hard to make friends in a college lecture. So I think a lot of people just think old is better for some reason. And, looking at all of you guys who are getting a little older, I would say old's not better.
that's a low blow.
Well, I mean, like none of us would have gotten into YC now with what we were doing.
Definitely
When
wouldn't have.
we're
That's how
got
you
into
know it's-
YC, so
that's how you know
you've
it's
leveled
good.
up to some extent.
That's the only kind of club I want to be part of. Is one that I won't get in anymore. I'm like grandfathered in. Like Yale, definitely wouldn't get into Yale now. It's like 10 times more
no.
competitive.
Yeah.
But the let's talk about the fundraising aspect of YC because Jamie brought that up, and I think that is the one no-brainer kind of aspect of YC is that you give up 7%, which can seem like a lot, but in terms of the valuation uplift post YC, I mean, I was seeing companies go from $4 million in valuation in December before YC to $30 million of valuation in March without that much substantive progress. So like, what's that look like, Michael?
Well, I would argue that was massive progress as indicated by the increase in valuation. In my experience, higher valuations always correspond to more value being created.
Higher valuation is progress.
No. For real, it's funny because I still get emails every day from people saying, should I do YC? Is it worth it? And like, for at least half the batch, YC pays for itself on demo day. For at least half the batch. And then
At least,
yeah. And
I
like
would
for
guess
the other
like,
half
I guess
the
like
batch,
80%.
it's high. It's high. And then for the other group, it's like you did YC at like a 50% discount to the deal, or a 60 or a 70% discount. And then we pile on, up to $1 million of free credits for crap. And then we also help you get your first $1 million in ARR. So the benefits start adding up pretty quick.
Whoa.
Well,
Just you get those same benefits if you're in Techstars.
I know I've never been to Techstars.
Just for the audience, though, back when Michael was saying that it pays for itself, I think what he means is that the valuation on demo day goes up by so much. Like it's, it could be 2 or 3x what you might have gotten without YC. And so even though you're giving 7% to YC for money in, by the way, the increase in your valuation means that you might wind up with even more money in.
So
Yeah, we did the math.
like
and for
valuations-
most people. Okay, Jamie.
Valuations only go up though every year. It's like YC every year is more expensive. Everything's more expensive. I was looking at today. I was actually looking at for a random reason, looking at the Venture Hacks cap table from like 2007, and it has an entry in it which is like Series A investors, and then the base amount in the table is like $1 million per investor, or like $2 million per investor. And I was like, who's raising a $2 million Series A now? That's like a pre-seed round.
It's actually really interesting to look back to the old YC batches and see what like the hot companies were raising at. Like I remember investors being outraged that there was a $4 million valuation for Optimizely. This was a long time ago, but like every batch, there's someone outraged about like a new high valuation because investors have this sticky price mindset where 2 years ago I remember paying this and now it's more. It's like the inflation bugs.
For minting many more unicorns every week. So
exactly.
What's frustrating to me about that is that investors have less memory of what MRR the companies have a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago when they were investing. Like Justin TV didn't make its first dollar of revenue for 4 years, I think. And like now probably 80% of the companies in YC are making revenue by the time they have demo day. So, I agree. Like, I wish that the sliding scale reflected the additional progress YC companies make. A lot of YC companies come into YC have to be operating for 1.5 to 2 years. Back in the day, we were like building our V1 in YC. So it's definitely different.
I think there's also, I actually don't think that valuations have increased in proportion to exit valuations. Like the terminal valuations now for companies like before it was like if you were $1 billion, that was crazy. Now it's like $10 billion and $30 billion, outcomes. And so, that would imply that your entry price could, have like an order of magnitude of flexibility. But that hasn't really happened. Like the companies in 2012, like maybe that was an exceptionally hot year, but like when we had like Social Cam and Exec and like Gusto and stuff like that were in the batch, I remember valuations, which was really high, was like 20 million and or like 15 to 20 million. And now, the valuations are pretty much the same actually. They're actually more in favor to the investors because now it's all measured on a post money, which is actually much better for investors. So I actually think valuations have not increased that much in the last 7-8 years.
I agree, and I get to look at the data, and I think you're exactly right. Yeah, but let's not let data destroy a good story, which is that
we never
early
will.
stage investors are getting screwed now. And it's not because there are 60,000 more of them all competing against each other. It's because of YC.
They also have no agency. They're being forced to invest.
Exactly.
You know?
Early stage investors are getting screwed because all they have to do is show up to a room and then gamble away other people's money, and then somebody else builds the company that maybe it becomes a unicorn and makes the bridge.
And the room is often in their apartment because it's on Zoom now.
So okay, well, like that goes to another point that I wanted to talk about, which was this idea of casino capitalists, and I think one of the hard parts about YC Demo Day for investors is often that they have to make a decision pretty quickly because there's this kind of forcing function. Like in a vacuum, if you introduce investors to companies, the investors take like a very long time to decide, right? They think about it, some more, they maybe do some diligence, maybe they forget, they go to Mykonos or something, and then they come back and they're like, okay, let's do a deal, or not. They ghost you. And YC Demo Day is like, well, because you bring everybody together at the same time, it becomes much more like a market. And so that makes people make decisions really quickly. It forces them to. And people complain about that too. I think I've complained to you about that, but most recently I saw that maybe, we don't know. It's lost to the annals of time. But one of our other YC alumni acquaintances, Sumon Sadhu, kind of posted about this on Twitter. He was saying there's this rise of these casino capitalists. I love that term, casino capitalists, which is like people who, investors who meet one time on demo day, and like for 30 minutes or an hour on Zoom, and then they throw in, the whatever, $100,000, $200,000, $1 million check into a company, and they don't, do very much diligence, and it's just basically they're gambling. But like, do you think YC forces this type of environment, or like, what do you think of the rise of the casino capitalist?
So I think a couple things. One, we make investment decisions after 10 minutes. So just to give you a sense of kind of YC's operation, and we've been doing that for 16 years, and it's going okay. So that's the first thought.
I think a lot of people would be like, if you let me invest at a $1.7 million valuation, I'll do that all day long. I'll trade the 30 minutes for 10 minutes and the $1.7 million valuation. I'd do that.
I'm just saying, we figured out how to get signal pretty fast. I think the second thing is something our friend Matt Fong said, which is that, I'm going to butcher the code exactly, but pre-product market fit, you're really just trying to figure out what kind of founders you're dealing with. And any kind of deeper diligence than that is, he said, self-delusional, which is interesting. But our company started as a reality TV show where you were wearing a camera on your head. So any deep diligence on that would have not been helpful in making an investment decision, I would say. I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing is that it's a little exaggerated. I think the second thing is, if when people are writing larger checks into companies, they often get more time with them. I think, certainly if you're writing a $25,000 check, you usually have to decide quickly and so on and so forth. I think the third thing is when a deal is hot outside of YC, you don't have days, weeks, months to decide, right? And so it's not really clear to me what the difference is between, like, in some way, why every YC deal should be hot, right? Like, we look at 16,000 companies and we only take 2.5% of them. So, like, that's a pretty curated list. So instead of comparing the YC deal flow to your average deal flow, you should probably compare it to your elite deal flow. And if you're a good investor, you can't let your elite deal flow just hang out there for weeks. That's a recipe for not being a good investor. So yeah, I think that it's fine. I think that, like, there's a market happening. Like, we're complaining about how the market is actually acting. And it's like, damn, like, don't markets,
what kind of
like,
capitalist
don't,
are you?
yeah, exactly. Don't markets like reveal the truth? Like, and this is how the market's acting. So, and let's be clear, we don't need it to act that way. If everyone wanted to spend more time talking to our companies, it took longer to raise, that's fine. Like, take more time.
It would just require collusion on the part of all the investors. Like,
too many of them.
T-Con, Jamie, like, what's your guys' investment philosophy on demo day. Did you guys invest in anything from this batch?
No, the new fund is just getting like ramped up right now. Although we made a couple like small personal angel investments, I think, one really quick point on valuation that I want to make too is like the actual funds that these early stage investors have also grown in size by 3-4x. So if they're paying a 3 or 4x higher valuation, they're still buying the same ownership percentage, just using more capital out of their fund, and frankly getting more fees. So in some sense, they probably shouldn't complain as much.
I think the main thing
you
is
know,
like.
Oh, go ahead, Jimmy.
I think the main thing is like, it's fine to pay the valuations at the early stage, with the late stage being what it is now. But you're also like most exposed to the risk of it changing, because you're investing a fund at like high prices, and if anything changes in like the macro environment and then the prices go down, it's not like you get to change your initial investment to be from like a 30 cap to like 15. You've just now overpaid for all of those companies, and your returns are going to be lower. And so I think like people who are foreseeing inflation and a bunch of other stuff that's like looking potentially negative for like growth tech stuff are a little bit worried about it, and then they're whining about valuations. But they should just either not invest or invest. It's part of the game.
Yeah, it's not going to be orders of magnitude of a correction though, right? Like you started to see the first $1 trillion companies, right? Apple and Amazon, whatever. And so that's like never happened before. That's kind of completely independent of startups, and those companies aren't going to go back to being $100 billion companies.
Yeah, there was also a lot of talk when all these tech companies were still private that like, the growth stage rounds are out of control, they're too expensive. But then when these companies go public, they're trading at much higher multiples than they were in the private markets.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think somewhere along the line, people are not remembering that Mark Andreessen quote, software's eating the world. Like, they're not remembering that, like, we're, 20, 25 years, maybe 30 years into a 100-year softwareification of the entire economy. Like, if we compare that to electricity, we're just getting started. And of course, this is going to be a huge industry. It's going to eventually subsume the entire economy. So, in that context, I think a lot of people 10 years from now are going to be perfectly happy with their entry valuations.
I remember Mark
Exactly.
Andreessen talking about like how he got to Silicon Valley in like 1995 and he thought he missed it. Like he was like, "Oh, I came too late. It's all over."
And now he's doing just okay. He's going to make it.
He's doing all right.
He's doing all right.
Okay, so this brings me to my next topic. Jamie, you have a new job.
I do.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congrats, Jamie.
You want to tell us about it? Tell the audience about it.
Yeah, Tegan and I are actually launching a new fund to invest in startups at massively overpriced valuations.
That's the thesis.
The higher, the better.
That was actually our pitch.
What's the fun?
We told the
what's
LPs we're going to
called?
try and pay as much as possible for every deal. Yeah, so we just closed the new fund, about to start investing out of it. Really excited because I've been on the not investing side for almost 15 years now, to become a VC and start living the easy life. as
Everybody joins the dark side eventually.
Yeah, tell us how it
happened?
is, Justin. Tell us how it is versus being an operator.
It's so much. I mean, I've said this before, but being a VC is possibly the easiest job on earth. And a lot of VCs say that's not true, which is laughable to me, because it's like, if you work at any other type of fund management, right? Let's say you're managing like a long short hedge fund. You have to, like, things happen every day that you need to pay attention to. When you're a VC, yeah, you do diligence, you compete for deals, whatever, but then you invest in the company and then you can't do shit. Like,
I was just talking with
Yeah, you
Tegan
should-
about this. Like, the other day, because we'll play around with some crypto stuff here and there, and I had like one trade that was going like pretty well, and I'm like, this shit is stressful. I have to worry about when's the right time to sell. Should I sell now? Should I sell in an hour? Should I have sold 2 hours ago? Is the best time to sell at 3 a.m. in the middle of the night when I'm asleep? I don't know. Am I going to lose a bunch of money if I don't stay awake all night? Whereas like a startup, it's like you're not selling it. You
can't.
That's
you
why.
can't sell it.
That's why people were saying, or people have said about Coinbase, like you could have invested in Bitcoin at almost every point along the way, and have done.
It would have outperformed Coinbase.
I don't think it now. I don't think it's an outperform, but it would be pretty close to exactly the same. But the thing is, like, nobody's gonna sit through like a 500x of Bitcoin and hold it. But if you invested in Coinbase and it's like you have to deal with getting company approval to sell or putting together an SPV or finding a bunch of buyers, you're just going to be like, oh, whatever, I'll just like let it sit there. And then the people who did that were basically forced to hold all the way through this other stuff that they wouldn't have, or most people wouldn't have, because I'm not like deep fucking value over here sitting through like a $20 million loss and just being like, oh, I'm going to buy more, you know.
That's a good point. I mean, as a VC, you can't, as a private company, early stage investor, there's nothing you could do. You just invest. Well, I mean, very rarely can you make any decisions. You can pretty much invest. You can help the founder, and like try to be a support person. You're really, maybe you're helping them in some critical way. That's probably rare. Like 1 out of every 10 or 20 or 50 times that you actually do something. But that's what you could do, and then you don't have any choice. You don't have to make any decisions, and it's much, much easier than any kind of like other financial management, let alone operating a company where you have to actually do everything.
I mean, operating a company is the most stressful. Having operated a company, been an employee, and operating is the worst by all measures, which is probably why it's the most.
But 1 second though, whoa, you all are like venture entrepreneurs. Because you've all started your own funds and you're now operating them. So you're saying that like starting your own fund is not as stressful and as hard as starting a company?
No.
Just checking.
I mean, to go back to what you were saying though, Justin, like I do hope like we are actually able to help. I bet you help people. Like hopefully I'm able to help people. I mean, a lot of what I'll end up doing on a day-to-day basis is helping the companies we're investing in with growth, product growth, go-to-market stuff, which is what I was doing already with consulting and a bunch of other stuff. So I think like the unhelpful VC is potential, like hopefully a thing of the past a little bit, because now you're getting more people with operating experience and people who are actually able to like provide some advice that's actually useful.
Yeah, you're doing the same thing that you were doing as a growth consultant, like as a head of growth for companies. You're just getting paid for it reasonably. So
it pays pretty well to do that if you join the right companies, but that you only get to invest in one company at a time is the problem, and you better pick well.
Yeah, you have a pretty good track record of joining the right companies, right? You joined Reddit, you joined Notion, which I hear is going well. I'm forced to use it every day. No, I love it.
Great product.
Kidding. I love Notion. It's great. So, like, what? But now you've joined. Wait, what's your guys' fund called?
We're still coming up with a name.
Okay. Well,
should we name it right on this?
Yes, we
podcast?
should.
I think this is the perfect place to name the fund.
I think you should name it the OnlyFriends Fund.
OnlyFriends Fund.
Michael,
I
what's
think
your
TJ
proposal?
Ventures.
That's actually not bad.
TJ Ventures.
Yes. I like combining names. JCon Ventures.
That sounds like Justin's fund.
But with an O. And an H in there just for fun.
Let's try and confuse people as much as possible. Can we come up with something unspellable? If it's unspellable and people can never figure out what the domain is, that's even better.
What was Elon's kid's name? Like
XAE 12 or something.
Yeah,
like
there's
that.
a 12 in there.
How do you pronounce it, though?
I mean, A16Z's got numbers. You guys need numbers in your name.
Yeah.
How do you pronounce it? I mean, you're not going to win one of those funds with a website, right? So people don't have to spell it. Like having a website isn't cool anymore, is it?
No, you just want to have
Like
an
those-
Instagram.
There it is.
You have a website, Justin. I've been to it.
I know. Robin insisted. I was like, what's the point of a website? Like, you know what's funny is our info at go. This is a total VC move, by the way. Info at goat.vc doesn't exist, but it's linked to, and it just bounces. And it has for like 6 months. And people keep being like, it's broken. And I'm like, this is a feature, not a bug.
This is why YC has a business. Like this is exactly why YC has a business.
Oh, man. I'm sorry. I probably sound like such an asshole right now, but like, yeah, it's hard to get in touch.
So
we
Justin,
announce
what
your
was it like
email right
raising
now?
your fund? What's
Okay,
that, Jimmy?
Saying, should we just
Raising the
announce
fund.
Justin's email right now? No, sorry, go ahead.
Just Justin at goat.vc. You can email me. I respond to Twitter DMs and Instagram DMs. So like people get a hold of me. I'm just kidding. Raising the fund is interesting. That's a good one because people probably want to know about that. And they want to know how to become a GP. Everybody's always like, how do I join the easy life and become a VC? So maybe we could talk about that in a second. But
Step
raising
one,
a fund
sell
is
a company
basically,
for $1 billion. Step
well,
two,
I mean, obviously,
become a
there-
VC.
there- you know, to be fair, that's the easy route, right? That's the easy mode version. It's also a great way to become the CEO of YC. It turns out, but there's the other people have creative raised funds. There's a lot of people out there who raised funds who didn't have that good of outcomes, and you know, there is a kind of way to do it. It's kind of like starting a company was very mystified before YC. Like there was not a lot of literature out there or like knowledge. Like I think VC is kind of like that now. It's like really hard to, like, you don't know how to start a fund. But I mean, basically it's convince people, like a bunch of rich people, to give you some money by telling. I like to think of investing as like there's 3 dimensions, right? There's what's your platform, like your brand or your proprietary deal flow. Like, you know, YC has like, we're the HBS of Silicon Valley, basically, or we're like the you know, the school for startups. Or SaaStr has like, we're gonna corner like the SaaS market, right? Like I think having proprietary brand is really important. And then the second thing is, how do you like your analysis? Like, are you making good decisions? And like the third attribute is like your hustle, or like how are you tracking down these deals? And to me, just like any sort of fundraising, raising money from investors is telling a story of how you do one or more of those things really well. You know, probably, you know, 2 or more. But to be honest, most people I think only do one of those things well, who are like, and you can be decent investors, and like the best investors do like all 3 of those things. Like I think T-Con, I think you're one of the best investors that I know, and I always think of you in that framework because I think you do like, you know, those things really well.
That's very kind. Actually, I was going to say earlier that because we're talking about VCs, if they're helpful, and I always tell people that our most helpful investor at Parse was actually Justin. We just dropped Justin.
Goodbye.
But anyhow, I always tell people that at Parse, our most helpful investor was Justin, because like we had, and Justin was one of, I think, our smallest investor.
Do you have to tell people that?
Still waiting. Oh,
But I mean, like when we needed help getting like PR, like marketing, like hiring, Justin was always there. And so I actually think just being a former operator really helps. Like Justin had, you know, started successful companies and was able to help in ways. And like he had those connections to like the PR people, like Wall Street Journal, New York Times, some key testimonials that we needed. He already had those connections, and he had just started a company. So having like recently done something, like having recently started something in the last 5-10 years is actually like really helpful for the companies that you wind up investing in.
Well, I want to pile on that. Not only does Justin have the connections, what I've noticed is that a lot of investors, even with the connections, don't actually want to do work for founders. Like there's all this kind of, oh, am I trading social capital for the right things? Like it's easier to kind of just not do stuff. And when Justin digs in, he digs in. I think that's been kind of cool to see too, is that like you can ask him, you know, the canonical ask is, can you help introduce me to engineers, right? Which is just like the easiest archive in your inbox. And then Justin actually goes and tries to help you get engineers. So
Well,
I think it's
engineers is
helpful.
hard, but I'm willing to like just shit all over my social capital, the list of people, and just like forward it to everybody and anybody. Like, you know, like, oh, you want to forward this to, I don't know who was recent, like Scooter Braun. Okay, yeah, sure, boom. He doesn't probably like, my response rate has gotten a little bit low, but I will make the effort. I will make the effort.
Yeah, but that's like the counterintuitive positive. Like in my mind, that's how Ronco built his business, right? And like, if you ignored those emails, you ignored making money. And so after a while, people stopped ignoring, right? And that's how he built his reputation. So I think it's much better to have a reputation of going above and beyond for the founders than
For
anything
sure.
else. Yeah.
For sure. Also, they remember you only need a few successes. Like you can say, okay, I'll try, and like send 20 intro emails, and like 18 of them get ignored, but you give them 2, and that's 2 more than anybody, other people. So then they're like, oh, you tried. Yeah. Or like, actually, I do find that there's a couple tips actually that help me. Like, cause I'm really bad with email. Like I put all of our founders on a text group now with Robin and I, and say, hey, if you need something, just text me, whatever it is. You could talk, if you want to talk about whatever, hiring your employees, or like building a leadership team, or, you need, like, people have asked for all sorts of things. Like they're like, how do I want to get in touch with someone at AWS. I want to get in touch with someone at Facebook because they cancel my ads. I want to get in touch with this YouTuber or whatever. And I'll just try to figure it out. I mean, no promises, but we'll like put it out there on Twitter, or like, use our network or whatever. And it actually takes if it's on text, it feels like it takes really little to like actually do it. So,
I feel like more stuff is actually moving to text or like Signal versus like email. I think email is actually becoming, I guess for better or worse, because it's much harder to manage like texts, like much more of a channel that people want to use.
Yeah, I think it's like a prioritization mechanism, because I get emails from like all kinds of people, and not everyone has my number. So it's like the people who have my number are my personal friends, and then also like the founders that I already invested in for the most part. And so it's like, okay, I prioritize all of that, and then I don't have notifications on my email, so I only check it like once in the, twice a day maybe, or if I'm at my computer. So, it's just like kind of what's the prioritization. So how do you get a job as a GP, Jamie? What was the qualifications? How did you convince some legitimate investor to take you under his?
I think the qualification is to either invest in or refer deals that make a shit ton of money for people. That's probably the best thing to do.
I mean, Jamie sent me a company for the first fund that it's actually a YC company, and it's already returned the fund a couple times over, and it's going to do so even more than that. And that was a company I never would have looked at except for Jamie spotting it. Jamie's a really good, like, he spots a lot of things that like I would never have seen.
What's the strategy, Jamie? Like, what do you look for in a company? What's like, how do you do it?
I mean, I think of everything through kind of like the growth lens. And so it's like this same concept as like how you're thinking about how to grow a company is like, you're evaluating, can this company grow? And so it's like, what is the distribution mechanism for this company? Is there like a reasonable story for how this thing could basically own like the entire market? And you kind of go from there. And then there's all the traditional stuff around founders and, all that kind of stuff.
What's fascinating is that there are so many ways to evaluate the market of startups, and there's so many different strategies you can employ, and there's so many ways to make money. Like I might have a completely different filter than you, and than Tikon and Michael, and we might all end up making money just on different types of companies, or different, somewhat overlapping subsets of companies.
Yeah. I mean, I tend to really like stuff where it's like there's, I guess, a clear story for how they could be some sort of monopoly, or for the market being like absolutely massive if there's not a story about them becoming some sort of monopoly. And then, there has to be a realistic way for them to grow. Like I remember there was this one company in the past where it was like, I think it might have been a YC company, and they were doing like this app for couples, and it was like, how's that going to grow? Because you don't like break up with your girlfriend every week and get a new one. So like there's no viral growth, and like the thing doesn't make enough money on to become a paid growth thing, and a bunch of investors invested in it, and I was just like so puzzled as to like why. Anyways,
Okay.
I guess what I was saying is, everybody always thinks that these startups that have like massive hype train are just gonna like live off that forever and grow to be huge, but like the reality is all these companies that had a massive hype train, converted that to viral growth, but they converted it to viral growth not because they continue to get pressed forever, but because there was actually some viral mechanism within their product. A lot of these things you can use as like heuristics, at least to figure out what not to invest in, and then sometimes they give you clues as to what's good.
Go ahead.
Justin, I wanted to ask you, what was it like being a VC during the pandemic? Like for you, like how did you handle that sort of transition?
It was surprisingly easy. Kind of like Y Combinator is just so much more efficient. Like I take almost every meeting that's referred from like a decent referral because I want to learn. And I love meeting, I really love meeting people, and I love learning about business ideas. So even if it's not something I think it's kind of far-fetched that I'd invest, usually take it to really learn. And sometimes I'm surprised and have made investments like that. And so, but I can do that now because it's like, so the cost of meeting someone is really only 30 minutes of time versus, driving somewhere, or the founder having, maybe they were in a different city or something like that and having to figure out how to actually meet them. So, and I do feel like people say that you can't read body language, you can't really read someone on Zoom, but I don't believe that. Like, you can read people pretty well on Zoom, I think, like maybe not 100%, but at least like 90%. You can get the feel of what's that person's energy. One of my bars for who I want to work with, both inside our firm, but also founders, is like, I only want to work with people when I see them, it puts a smile on my face. That's why I like doing this podcast. I want to see people who it puts a smile on my face. It's enjoyable to see them and hear from them and talk to them. And so that's, you can tell that over Zoom, you don't, and I think it's actually been really good for investors, the pandemic, because it's made them more efficient, and, the lifestyle from being able to work from home is amazing. Right. And so I found it was like not hard at all. Like we closed our fund in right around September, like early September of last year. So it was like 6 months ago. And that was right when YC Demo Day was happening last batch. And so we met these founders, and there was like no hesitation, with these people that we only met on Zoom to like say, oh, these are the founders we like and we want to support.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because I always think, what signal are you getting? Like, we're on video camera with each other. Like, you can't hide your face, right? You can't change how you talk because we're on Zoom. And so I always am puzzled by that thought that I have to be in person. It's like, what am I not getting? I guess I don't get if they smell. I can't tell if they smell.
Or if they're like shaking their leg constantly under the table.
But is that
a negative sign?
Yeah,
or
what
a
am I
sign?
supposed to interpret that? Shaky leg, invest. Just go. So I never understood that. I still think that it's sometimes funny how in the innovation economy we're in, some people still are kind of like, oh no, we got to do it the old way. But I've been so happy at how many investors have just been like all in. Like, just like you said, like, this is making my job easier. I can talk to more people. I'm going to fully embrace it. Do you think it's going to stay like this, Justin? Do you think investors
these motherfuckers are out here living in Tulum, Florida, Miami, Greece. Like, they're not going back. Like, when you can do your job from Mykonos, like, do you want to return back to like the in-person? I don't know. I mean, maybe for like a couple weeks a year, or like, it's like the reverse. You like want to come back for like a month so you could like feel the energy of the Bay Area or something. And then boom, you're going to be gone again. I just don't think it's ever going back for investors.
I mean, it's not going
Tico,
back
what
for
do
a
you
lot
think?
of companies. Like, I was listening to Mark and Andreessen on Clubhouse like last night, or they did their show, like Mark and Ben. And they were saying something like 54% of their companies were saying they're going to be remote first of all the Andreessen companies, which is like nuts. And there's only like 8% who are like, we're going to basically require everybody to be back in the office like normal before the pandemic. So that means like for 92% of companies, it's going to be different than it was before, which is an insane percentage.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like you're
that.
screwed either way, right? Like, if you force everyone to come back, everyone in their 30s with kids is going to get pissy. If you have no office, everyone in their 20s living in a shitty apartment is going to get pissy. So it's cool. Like, we're going to have to invent something.
Well, everyone's like, the hybrid thing is the dumbest thing, though. It's like, yeah, let's have these hubs in cities that are expensive and then make people still go to the office 2 days a week, but because they're working from home 3 days a week, they also have to have like another 60 square feet at home to work from home. And it's just like
I'm
the
probably the
worst of
weirdo.
both
I actually,
worlds.
I actually like the hybrid model because I think back, especially when I was writing a lot of code at like Scribd and Parse, I got most of my work done like after everyone else would leave, like in terms of like writing code. You know, I was doing email during the day, and you need that kind of quiet. But I also wanted that team solidarity feel and that feeling that I had a sort of like you know a team I was a member of, which I think would have been harder for me to get, especially at Scribd, without you know the go-karts that we had in the office and you know stuff like that.
I actually
Yeah,
agree with you. I just think it doesn't make like a lot of economic sense.
Well, I've been
Well,
thinking
it's
about
something
this a
that will be-
lot because I think that like what happens if the time you spend together in the office is actually almost purely social. Like it's not like because you don't need to be in the office for meetings, and you definitely don't need it to write code and like do sales. Like maybe separating culture from office is a great thing. Offices don't generally seem like a great place to build culture. Like they kind of suck for that actually. So maybe it's you're coming together once a week, but it's not in an office. It's at a restaurant, or it's at somewhere else, or it's at a ballpark, or you know, you just there's something fun you do with your company every week. I mean, you're saving so much time not commuting and so on and so forth. It's probably worth it to give up a half a day to have fun with your coworkers. So that'd be a lot of
cool.
Yeah.
I think there's been this huge, you know, there's also this added benefit of like all the make work in the, you know, in the coronavirus world where you're working from home has disappeared, and people are like, wow, I can be so much more productive. Like for a lot of companies, I think other companies have maintained this like ridiculous meeting schedule, which has been terrible, but you know.
I think there's some creativity trade-off in the very early stage, like when you're just
Yes.
like 3 or 4 or 5 people. I think it's actually really beneficial to be all together. But once you like have a real business and you're just like optimizing it, it seems kind of unnecessary.
I agree with you there, Jamie, completely. Like I still can't imagine starting a company and not being in the same room as my co-founders. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So pandemic, do we think it's over now? Are we, or is this gonna like persist? Like
It's on
is
its
it-
way
are
to
we
over.
weeks away from over?
6 weeks, maybe 6 to 7
Yeah,
weeks.
6-8 weeks. Yeah.
Is everybody here getting their vaccination, or are we have any anti-vaxxers among the among the crew? You can admit it. Like you're not gonna get cancer. There's enough of America is anti-vax now that it's not a radical belief.
Super pro-vaccine. I also think like I'm surprised that they haven't. Actually, I think this is one thing that California is screwing
He's in
up,
the process of getting canceled.
or maybe
right
not
now.
California.
Definitely keep that in.
The vaccine is ending, or sorry, the vaccine is working, and the pandemic is ending. And aside from Jamie, we're all going to get the vaccine, right?
How about
Already got the
vaccine
vaccine.
passports?
One
Are you
thing I
guys going
wanted
to
to
get
bring
vaccine
up-
passports so you can travel?
Vaccine. What
So I don't
is that a
understand
real
why
thing?
that's so controversial. Because don't you have to have an immunization card to like go to a lot of countries? Isn't this just adding another line to your immunization card, or is this like I have to be outraged somehow because
Michael,
of
and
Facebook
then-
and Twitter?
Exactly. In the new world, we get outraged about things that have already been in practice for like 50 years. Like that's the rule.
Sorry. I need to adjust to the new rules. I apologize. I'm
I
an
mean,
innovator.
I think
believe in
the
new
argument
rules.
from people opposed to it, I'll play devil's advocate, is that it impinges upon their freedom and privacy, and they don't want to have to show this passport to attend events in their hometown, or I mean, I don't know what they're thinking, but like go to concerts, that sort of thing. For me, I mean, the libertarian argument here seems I'm very sympathetic to it, and it's that maybe the government shouldn't be doing this for people, you know, going about their daily business, but private businesses should be able to. If a concert wants to advertise themselves as being corona-free and they verify that for people going in, that doesn't seem like a big deal.
I agree.
Yeah, we just need the government to facilitate it. so that they can.
Well, New York
businesses
State
can make
actually
that
launched
decision.
their,
one second, Ken.
vaccine passport, and then meanwhile today, DeSantis announced, the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, announced that he's going to use an executive order to ban vaccine passports or in Florida, and he's urging the Republicans to pass the same in their state legislature.
So I just want to be clear. Is the libertarian position also that the government shouldn't fund or pay for vaccines? Because that seems also like...
I'm not a libertarian,
right?
but I
No, but you're playing one on the podcast, so you must defend their positions.
this is how Jamie got labeled alt-right.
All right, now Tegan and I have
I'm just trying to figure out where the line is.
What is your label, Michael?
I'm just a guy. I'm just a normal Joe.
He's a.
What do they call it? Joe the plumber.
Joe Plumber.
Just a normal VC.
Joe Sixpack.
Doing the VC plumbing work. Clearing up those tubes so funding can go through.
So what's the argument? What is the argument against vaccine passports? Like, what's the DeSantis argument that's that they should be banned?
Yeah, so DeSantis
like
was saying that it's a violation of your privacy and your freedom. And I think his argument would be, I'm speculating here, it's that if you're a high-risk individual, you already had time, you've been first at the line for a long time, and you've had time to get vaccinated. And so if you choose not to and put yourself at risk, should everyone have to compromise on their freedom and privacy?
But it's goodbye, Jamie. It's the freedom of businesses to decide whether to
I totally
serve
agree. I mean,
people who are coronavirus.
This is why I also support Twitch
carriers,
being able to deplatform whoever they want. I mean, my freedom of association at Scribd should trump your freedom of speech. If you want to upload 20 terabytes of like offensive, terrible stuff to Scribd, I don't have to host that.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the deeper issue? Do we actually think the government, even if they decided to do this, could pull it off in the next, 2 to 4 years? So is this like a non-issue just because we're not capable of making vaccine passports?
It does seem like we rolled out the vaccine. We did a surprisingly okay job. Like after the initial bumps, we're vaccinating 3-4 million people a day now. That's like, we were applauding Israel for doing 1% of the population a day. Like, looks like that's what the U.S. is at. So the passport part seems like the easy part. Like, it's like, okay, we gave you the shot. We got all this cold logistics to give you a shot. And then now we just need to give you a piece of paper that says that you got the shot. But that's where we couldn't figure it out.
Counterintuitively, I think the paper is harder. Counterintuitively, due to the nature of our political system. I think that you can't not get elected if you fund a shot that saves people's lives. But funding a piece of paper, that can get political real fast. So I don't know. I don't think it's going to matter so much. If these vaccines work, it seems like it ain't going to matter anyways, right?
I guess that's true. Everyone who wants to get vaccine will get it. Everyone who doesn't want it will either have herd immunity and they won't get it, or they'll just get it and some percentage of them are going to die. And that's what we're doing. Yeah. But one thing I think we should have, though, is the government should economically incentivize vaccines. Like right now, we are basically disincentivizing vaccines by imposing what's effectively a tax on people who want to get vaccinated, which is like the taxes. You've got to figure out this bullshit websites that you have to that even technically sophisticated people seem to have trouble with. And then you have to go and if you want a vaccine right now in California, it's not open to everybody. So all these people are getting DoorDash jobs to qualify as food workers so they can get the vaccine or whatever. So you have to go through some technical hurdles. And then you have to go and actually get line up at a certain time. You can't just walk in and get it. So effectively we're imposing a tax, and we should be considering a subsidy for people who get vaccines because there is a huge cost to this public health epidemic. And it would be better if we said, hey, we'll pay you. We're going to give everybody who gets a vaccine $5. We're going to buy them an ice cream cone, whatever it is. That would be better than what we have now.
Honestly, subsidizing in any way good health activities is got to pay for itself instantly, right? Maybe we could learn how to do that on this one and then use it for other things.
Whatever happened to all those startups trying to get insurance companies to be the ones to kind of encourage good, healthy behavior amongst the people they're insuring?
A bunch are being successful. Yeah.
Well, Yeah, especially with self-insurance. Like, businesses have a lot of incentive to roll this stuff out when they have to cover their healthcare directly. I think what's tricky is that a lot of disorders still take so long to create health impact that like people just want to ignore them.
Yeah, so it's not the short-term impact on the bottom line for companies isn't fast. It's not a fast enough feedback cycle.
Yeah.
But I think that's that is happening though. You have companies that are more on the preventative healthcare side that are helping people, with their kind of like preventing their chronic conditions, and that I think that's going to be a trend. And insurance companies are looking for. They're partnering. I've seen a lot of startups that they're piloting with insurance companies to do things that reduce, that improve outcomes that are much more on the preventative
Back to
side.
vaccines, though, we already do require like vaccinations for like kids going to school. So this isn't like a huge foreign concept to require. I had to get a TB shot when I was going to public school, and like this is actually very normal. It's not un-American.
Tell us how you
It
really
is
feel.
now. It is now.
If a concert promoter or like a sports event wants to require a proof of vaccination, why not?
How about a post office? How about a polling center? How about a DMV?
Now we're wading into the political gray area where this cancellation is imminent.
I'll pose one fear about these vaccine passports, because I don't want to like caricature their argument, is that perhaps like the TSA, it will be this monstrous bureaucracy that never stops. Like, we're still going through TSA security 20 years after 9/11. And what if these vaccine passports expand? That's sort of slippery slope argument. What if it expands and becomes like another arduous thing for normal Americans to deal with?
That being said, there hasn't been another 9/11, so maybe TSA is working.
I think there's evidence it's not. No.
Any takers?
No one wants
That was served up on a beautiful platter.
No one wants to take the other side of that one.
TSA is a problem that could be solved with technology. Someone should do that. Computers can look for dangerous items in X-rays way better than humans can.
The TSA, we need the TSA because it's a make work program. It's kind of like our 2000s version of the kind of like the FDR
The Hoover Dam.
era, like building the federal highways. Like, we're just not building highways, we're just making people take their shoes off. But the TSA is a huge employer, and we need them to make the economy work.
And how do we feel about Krispy
Jamie
Kreme
again.
giving
All right.
away free donuts to people who get the vaccine?
No, that's exactly what I'm talking about. We need to be doing more subsidies like that. Like, Krispy
Does
Kreme
anyone
is
not like that? Doesn't
Well,
that
I
just
mean,
seem like a good thing?
it's creating a comorbidity, actually, which is probably negative for public health outcomes.
One donut is not making a If it was free donuts for life, maybe that would be a bigger problem. But it's one donut. Jesus Christ.
I mean, I think Krispy Kreme is showing the way for the American government here. It's like, so here we can subsidize something that's like good public health policy. Like, maybe instead of a Krispy Kreme, though, they just give you like, $5, $5 federal tax rebate or something like that, or $100. I mean, how much does it cost? You could probably calculate the cost. Well, we know the cost of the pandemic, and then like, the incremental benefit of each person getting the vaccine. You could find some number that to deliver people to the vaccine. We should be willing to pay. All right. Well, let's wrap this up with. I want to ask: is this summer and the next year going to just be the most insane party, travel celebration that our generation has seen? Like, what do you guys
Absolutely.
think? Where are we going?
Mykonos. Yeah, but I think that's absolutely it's gonna be an amazing 6 months.
What's the travel like company to back or buy? What's the travel?
It's too late for that.
They're
You
already
gotta
all,
book your
like,
flights
yeah.
before everything sells out. The S&P's at an all-time high. You've already missed that boat, so just literally buy tickets on a boat to do something else.
Do it ASAP.
I don't know. I Airbnb I still think is I would still buy it even at these prices.
Oh no, tech companies
I'm gonna
excluded.
be
I'm talking about like public travel companies. Yeah.
Oh, you mean like an airline or something?
Like
No.
United Airlines.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. I actually think it's going to be 2022. I don't know why, but I have a feeling that like maybe younger people are going to go crazy this summer, but like when are the people who are the 60s and 70s who like have been told that going outside means death? Like they might take them a little bit more time to get back into the swing of things.
Gotcha. You're probably right, because I think that the vaccine distribution hasn't going to happen in the rest of the
Europe,
world.
yeah,
yet,
Europe
but
is
by
like
the
a
summer.
mess right now. Like
So
France just announced they're going into another lockdown. Vaccine distribution in like other European countries is still like sub 10%. It's pretty bad. I think they only
Yeah,
have like
Europe
one
makes our
approved
government look-
vaccine, and then like AstraZeneca's having tons of issues.
Yeah, they're actually making us look like very, very competent, which is remarkable.
But why isn't that story blowing up? Like American government incompetence, I see that every day in the news. What about like
The news
things
doesn't
are
tell
getting better
positive
now? I
stories,
don't really see
Michael.
that
What
much.
There's no one to get outraged at about that story.
Yes.
Maybe we should all get fake outraged at positive stuff, like as a group for like a year, and like trick the media into just selling positive stories. Like, can we pull that off?
If you mask get everyone to only click on positive stories,
It's a
then
beautiful
it would
dream.
probably work actually.
Like
We'd
sometimes
fool
I
the
think
Facebook
that like
algorithm.
sometimes I think Facebook should just do like sometimes I feel like Facebook's so powerful, but it's just not using any of the power. And I kind of want them to flip to the other side and be like, no, fuck it. Let's make the algorithm make everyone happy, like reduce like bipartisan craziness. Like let's use all this power to make the country a better place. And like, you know, have some protection so we don't go dictator and like kill everyone. But like why not? Like hell, you control 2-3 hours a day for most of humanity on the internet. Why not make everyone happier?
Well, actually, it would be a lot easier if it was a monopoly, right? Like Facebook and Twitter kind of competes with Twitter for, spreading news links, and then, you have like kind of Instagram and YouTube and TikTok all competing. And so outrage, well, TikTok's probably a pretty good example where with the algorithm, outrage is not really what resonates on TikTok, right? So
No.
with Facebook and Twitter, which are probably the primary drivers of like outrage media stories, they're in this outrage cells, right? And so they kind of compete with each other. So if one of them gives up, they're in this like, prisoner's dilemma, right? Where if one of them focuses on positive stories, then the other one will probably gain relative market share because it's, focused on outrage and amplifying
But you just
outrage.
made the point about TikTok. How do you explain TikTok in that dynamic? What happens if positive is like a whole undiscovered blue ocean of
Well, that-
opportunity?
So I think that could be the case, but what I'm saying is like Facebook and Twitter should actually merge, or they should collaborate, and then they could all both become positive.
So what you're telling me is that like at the risk of being worth slightly less money, Facebook shouldn't flip the switch to make everyone on earth happy who has internet connection. Because
Well,
God forbid they make a little bit less money.
They should, right? That would be the pro-social thing to do, but
But we should
unfortunately,
let them have
there's
a monopoly on social media.
Well, it's not like
just to
sustainable
incentivize
forever.
them
You're
further.
like they should do
Exactly.
something
To
bad for their
incentivize them
business,
further.
And it's like, well, yeah, maybe they maintain their business for like half as long then. So
all right. Let's do it. We're gonna wrap up. We're gonna wrap up with this idea that Jen came up with for friend or foe, where each of us gets to make a prediction on something that we talked about, and then you can we'll all say that whether we believe that prediction, you're friend to it, or foe, we think it's bullshit. And then later someone can dig this up, years later, and be like, these guys were geniuses, or they were fucking terrible predictors. I don't
Do
even
you
know
make
what's
the
gonna happen.
prediction or do we make the prediction?
We'll just go around. Each person can make a prediction on like something that we, some content.
And then
Like-
the other
like-
ones say friend or foe. I got you.
Exactly.
Okay, go
So
ahead.
like Y
Love it.
Combinator will be 75% international companies within 5 years. Actually, that's my prediction. I think it's true.
75% international in 5 years.
Yeah, 75% non-U.S. companies.
I think that's the
within 5
trend. 5 years feels fast, but I should have waited for Michael to talk first, just to crib the right answer.
Yeah.
So you're saying
if
foe.
we're talking founders, I might be friend. That's possible. Yeah. I'll be aggressive.
Why does
Certainly within
founders
10, so fuck it,
differentiate
yeah.
from startups?
It's always tricky. It's like if you're a European founder selling to U.S. remote and incorporated in the U.S.,
I see.
right? Like, so.
Okay, we'll say founders then.
Yeah.
75% international founders.
Yeah.
I'd say friend. I
Michael
agree
says
with that.
friend.
I already said foe, so I have to. I can't. I can't
jumping
change
on
my
the
mind now. I have to
bandwagon.
double down.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah, so
All
I
right, Tico, you
mentioned
got a prediction?
the Republican governor Ron DeSantis of Florida earlier. I believe he's laying the groundwork for a 2024 run at the Republican nomination, and I think he'll probably put in a strong showing.
I believe it. Friend.
Friend.
For sure.
Yes. Did you see that commercial of him, like, kissing up to Trump?
No, I didn't see
His
that
political
one.
campaign commercial. You got to watch it after this. It's incredible. Like it is, he took pandering to another level, and then paid millions to distribute his pandering on on Florida television. It was
It's
incredibly
a beautiful
impressive. But it's
thing.
the right kind of instincts to produce the outcome that you're talking about.
Yeah, Representative Matt Gaetz, who is now under investigation for sex trafficking, actually said that he couldn't run for president in 2024 because Ron DeSantis will be president. To apparently, privately, he said that apparently.
Jamie,
I'll
what do
go
you
with
think?
the local politics one. I think that we will successfully recall Gavin Newsom and plunge California into further chaos. I'm not sure. It'll
The
be
good
chaos.
kind of chaos.
From which a dark knight named alt-right Dark Knight rises.
God.
I believe it too. I'm friend
also
to that,
friend.
that prediction for sure.
Wow. You guys all think, oh, I'm going to be
I think they already have the signatures for it, don't they? Or,
Well, it'll 100
They
get
have
put
the
on the
signatures
ballot.
for that.
oh,
No, no, they
you
have the
mean that? Oh no,
signatures.
I mean in the state polling, he's going to win in the actual recall vote. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I'm optimistic.
Oh, I don't think he's gonna win a recall.
Okay.
It kind of depends on timing, actually, probably because like if the coronavirus pandemic is sufficiently over, we have such short memories. We'll probably be like, oh, everything's fine now. So like probably heavily depends on.
He
timing,
should
but
do
I'll
his
take the, like,
celebration
I don't
dinner
think
at
he'll win
French
a
Laundry
recall.
when he fails to get recalled.
All right, I got one. Joe
Okay.
Biden will be a two-term president.
Wow.
Playing against the
Can you be
statistics on.
president if you're like 95?
What's that? Yeah, you can be president.
He'll
at
be
95,
92
and
when he
won't
leaves
be
office then,
95,
right?
Unless he'd be longer than a.
That's
which
so
is not
old.
95.
Okay. I mean, 90. I want to even just see what Joe Biden looks like at 92 as president.
He's
One
84.
second. How old is Joe Biden right now?
Oh, okay.
No, he's 78. He's gonna be
Nowhere
nowhere
near.
near.
Oh, he'll be 6 years away.
do
So
you think-
far.
Do you
Also, I
think
hear the
Kamala-
president ages you a little.
It definitely can't be good for you. It can't be good for you. Joe Biden really is sacrificing himself for the United States. Do you think Kamala Harris wraps up the second term?
No,
Wow.
no, I think he does
No.
2 terms. I mean, dude, Ronald Reagan was taking long, very short work days by the end. But
I mean,
yeah, I think he does the second term, no problem. What do you guys think, friend or foe? Here?
I mean, I'm going to go with the actuarial tables and say foe because he's probably not going to survive that long.
I mean, Biden's approval numbers are really high, and especially as COVID goes away. I mean, yeah, if Biden survives, I think he wins in 2024. His approval numbers that came out today were 61% to 31, which is really strong. I don't think people realize just how strong that is. People got their stimulus checks. COVID's going away. People are happy.
I'm going to bandwagon Ticon's response. I agree.
Yep.
I'm a friend. I think he's going to get a second term.
All right, I got another one for you. Within the next year and a half, San Francisco will have a renaissance, a
Friend.
explosion of new restaurants, an explosion of new young people, an explosion of culture. There'll still be problems. There are always problems in cities, but San Francisco will be a place with a, what do they call that? A net increase in people or whatever the hell you call it. Like, it'll be a destination within the next year and a
Absolutely,
half.
friend.
I agree. I agree. I think that the pandemic has kind of, it draws people to the countryside and to smaller cities, but then they'll be drawn, some of those people will come back. I mean, I think the long-term problems in San Francisco are like truly terrible, but there will be new people. Young people don't care as much about that. They'll just come and try it out, and the cycle continues. It's like the cycle. It's the cycle of life, the circle of life.
You gonna sing for us?
The circle. It's the circle of
Please
life.
download Mr. New Dad's Africa as well while you're here, viewers.
Oh yeah, for people who don't know, I have a song on Spotify. If you don't know Mr. New Dad, search it Africa. Yep,
Strongly
it's a cover.
recommend.
What's your prediction, Justin?
I already made mine. It was about Y Combinator. Do I have any other further
sorry.
predictions?
On San Francisco,
Jamie, what's your
I think
prediction?
people will come back to cities in general. I don't think San Francisco will outperform versus other cities, though.
No. Did you do an overall friend or foe prediction
I'd
yet?
say like a friend for
recall.
the net immigration being positive, but I think that'll be more a trend of people going back to cities rather than a specific San Francisco trend of San Francisco doing better than other cities.
No,
Oh,
not
yeah.
on mine.
I did
you
it
do your
on
own
Gavin
prediction?
Newsom.
Newsom.
Yeah, this was the recall one.
Oh, Newsom. Oh, sorry. I'm a brain malfunction.
Brain fart. It's getting late. All right, this has been
Yeah,
great.
this
This
was great.
was a fun conversation as always. Thank you guys for joining. We're gonna do it again. I'm gonna use a different piece of software for sure. All right. Hopefully they can stitch this into something like reasonable.
sorry in advance
I'm
to
gonna
the
press
editing
stop.
team.
Thank you. All right. See you guys later.
That's gonna
Yeah,
be
no,
brutal.
seriously.